Hey everyone, how are you today? Welcome to Get Ready With Me and Talk About Stuff. My name is Stephanie and I am your host. I'm here for you every Monday talking about whatever happens to be on my mind and doing my makeup at the same time. This is not a tutorial, so if that's what you're looking for, there are so many tutorials out there that might be for you, but this probably isn't the thing that you're looking for. But we do have fun here. If you like my videos, please subscribe. Most of my viewers right now are not subscribers. What's up with that, people? If you like the videos, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell so you'll get notified every time I make a video. And you can tell your friends and your family and all your favorite people in the world to come watch these videos because they're, you know, they're kind of cool. Anyway. And, you know, also if you want to support future content, there's stuff in the description box that'll show you how to do that. But anyway, let's move along, shall we? So before we begin today's tale, I have a question for you. You like jazz? We're going to talk about Henry Ford and how much he really did not like jazz and the impact that would have on America's youth for decades to come. And once I start talking about this, you're going to know exactly what I mean. So before we dive into the meat of this topic, I think it's important to note that Henry Ford was a notorious anti-Semite. He was unapologetic about his anti-Semitism. He was so invested in the idea that Jewish people had a quest for world domination. He had a magazine called the International Jew where he wrote articles and so forth regarding just how awful, in his opinion, Jewish people were. And he has the dubious distinction of actually being praised in Adolf Hitler's book, Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf? I don't know how that's pronounced because, you know, I've never read the book and, you know, anyway, here we are. So that's Henry Ford, okay? He was not somebody who, he has a reputation for being a, you know, an industrial tycoon. You know, he innovated, he was very innovative in the way he ran his factories. You know, he gets credit for the assembly line and so forth, but you know, the fact that he was an anti-Semite really kind of blows all that stuff out of the water. I mean, it's just in a bad way, and it really kind of is like, okay, you did all those great things, but you also helped the Nazis. So we have to start there, and the reason we have to start there is because Henry Ford became very concerned when jazz started growing in popularity. He believed that jazz was, in fact, a Jewish invention. In fact, he said in his magazine in 1921, "Many people have wondered whence come the waves upon waves of musical slush that invade decent homes, that's code for white, and set the young people of this generation imitating the drivel of morons. Popular music is a Jewish monopoly. Jazz is a Jewish creation. The mush, slush, the sly suggestion, the abandoned sensuousness of sliding notes are of Jewish origin." Now you may be listening to this and saying, but Stephanie, jazz is part of black culture. Well, you know that and I know that, but he believed, now he did not think, he believed the Jewish people were evil. He did not think black people were necessarily evil. He believed that black people were just not intelligent enough to resist being manipulated by Jewish people with this insidious thing called jazz. So he believed that jazz music was invented by Jewish people to manipulate black people and influence white kids. That's basically what Henry Ford believed. And he was like really concerned about this. He believed that jazz was leading to moral decay. He believed that the music itself and the dances that accompanied it with all of their, you know, close bodies and so forth, was leading people to just absolute depravity between the you know, the atmosphere of you know, cabarets with the drugs and the smoking and the sex and everything. He just thought, this cannot happen, although I'm sure that's not what he said. It was probably much more ridiculous. So he's thinking, what can I do? What can I do? I know. Don't worry, everyone. I've got it under control. We're going to bring back old-fashioned dancing, and we're going to make it so popular that the kids are going to forget all about jazz. Everybody's just going to go wild for these dances I'm about to bring back to the culture. White culture in particular. Let's be clear about that. So how did he do this? Well, it wasn't something that he did all at once or overnight. He actually had like a years-long plan, an effort to make this happen. But it began, he started off in 1923 by hiring a man named Raymond Barrett to come to the inn that Henry Ford and his wife owned, called the Wayside Inn. And he hired Raymond Barrett to come there and teach him and his wife how to square dance, but not just those two. He also hired him to teach the guests at the inn how to square dance. So this was like you know, on multiple fronts, he was trying to get this done. This wasn't something that he was content to just leave to chance. He was like, anything I can do in my power to make this happen, I'm going to do it. And if that means that the guests at my inn have to learn how to square dance while they're here, well, then so be it. So he's out in the sticks. I guess that the Wayside Inn it's in a fairly rural location, from what I could gather. I didn't bother looking it up, and I probably should have, and I'm sorry. I was derelict in my duty in preparing for this video. But I digress. So he has Raymond Barrett come in there and start teaching him and his wife and their guests how to square dance. And he doesn't stop there. Oh, no, no. No, no. He also begins to take his massive wealth and funnel it into promoting country music, into, you know, promoting square dancing, or not just square dancing, but all kinds of what he termed old-fashioned dancing, to kind of just popularize it, to make it something that people would want to participate in. And he would do things like, he would have his employees attend square dancing events that he organized for them. They were required to. It was not an option. If you were working for Henry Ford, you were going to go to square dances and you were going to enjoy it. That is one of the terms of your employment with this company. So Henry Ford is like not messing around, okay? He is going to do everything in his power to make sure that square dancing takes hold. He didn't stop there. He also funded contests on the, you know, through radio stations for like fiddling contests. He helped start, I think I already mentioned this, but he helped start square dancing clubs across the country. He was so invested in this idea that he actually wrote a book for square dance instructors. And it was called Good Morning. Let me just make sure I get this right. Yes, Good Morning. After a sleep of 25 years, old-fashioned dancing is being revived by Mr. and Mrs. Ford. Now, I think this is the time when it's worth mentioning that white women often get a pass when we discuss white supremacy. It's assumed that white women are just following along passively with their husbands. They're not the ones doing it, it's the men. I think that we have to acknowledge that white women are the foot soldiers of white supremacy. And case in point, adding Mrs. Ford to this effort, and I didn't read anything about her not wanting that. I didn't read anything about her protesting that. Now, certainly it could be argued, given the time, that, you know, what was she going to do? But, you know, in the years since, certainly something would have surfaced somewhere if she was displeased with this. So a lot of times, the things that we give white women a pass for, and I'm white, clearly, so I'm, you know, I'm allowed to say these things about my own people. You know, a lot of times white women get a pass for things, and it's assumed that they're just passively involved, when in fact they're quite actively, just as white supremacists, if not more so, than their husbands. My lips are chappy-chapped. Anyway, so not only did he had the events for his employees, and interestingly, this is important, Henry Ford did hire black people to work at his company, and he did pay them the same. But he had this idea about black people, as I alluded to earlier, that they were just not intelligent enough to manage themselves without some guidance. Like, they needed someone to basically, not necessarily show them how to behave, but to, like, remove the temptations of alcohol and gambling and stuff. So this is part of the reason, another reason why he worked so hard to eliminate jazz. It's because he believed that because the Jewish people in his mind were targeting black people, and black people in his mind were not intelligent enough to see what was happening and to resist being manipulated, it was his job to step in there and do something about it. And this was kind of, it seemed from what I read, it was an idea he had pretty well across the board. He really believed that it was the job of white people to manage the things that would lead black people astray. And I guess that's the nicest way I can think to say it. You know, the guy was a real winner. Anyway, so he also petitioned schools across the country in the United States to adopt square dancing as part of their physical education program. So if you've ever wondered, okay, why are we doing square dancing in gym class? It's because of Henry Ford and him being a frothing at the mouth racist. So by 1928, roughly half the schools in the United States were including square dancing as part of their physical education. And Henry Ford, through his efforts, was able to bring back what he called old-fashioned dancing, and popularize it for a very short time. However, it would begin to fade into oblivion once more. But it didn't go without a fight. Oh no. In 1930, a Colorado superintendent named Lloyd Pappy Shaw decided he was going to pick up where Henry Ford left off, and he was going to do his best to get square dancing into more schools and really make this kind of a favorite pastime for the youth. He really believed that he believed in Henry Ford's message that the youth were going astray and square dancing could save the day. So Lloyd Shaw developed this program called the Lloyd Shaw, let me make sure I get it right, Lloyd Shaw Folk Dance Program. And what he did after he developed his program is he would travel around the United States and he would present his program to other superintendents and others who were in positions of, you know, regarding making decisions regarding curriculum and so forth. And he would present his folk dancing program, and tried to convince the school to adopt it. And he was wildly successful. You know, we still to this day in 2021, well, maybe not now because of COVID and so forth, but, you know, I have a 16-year-old niece, and she said that she did square dancing in school. So it's still very much a thing, is what I'm getting at. So square dancing starts picking up in popularity. Now, let me see. I kind of lost my train of thought here for a second. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, yes. So over the next several decades, as more schools adopted square dancing as a viable form of exercise for the students, and, you know, it became more prominent in various schools around the country, there was a strong push to adopt square dancing as the official dance of the United States. And there were folk dancing and square dancing organizations around the country that really pushed for this. And then in 1982, Senator Robert Byrd he sponsored a bill to make square dancing the official dance of the United States, and he actually was successful for a while. From 1982 to 1993, square dancing was the official dance of the United States. Now, within the bill, they give, you know, eloquently stated reasons for why square dancing, above all other dances, should be considered the national dance. Now, let me read some of that to you. The bill praised square dancing because, quote, the American people value the display of etiquette among men and women, which is a major element of square dancing. And, quote, it is a traditional form of family recreation which, quote, dissolves arbitrary social distinctions. So this was signed into law by Ronald Reagan, and it would remain the official dance of the United States until 1993. Now, why did it change? What happened? Well, as you might imagine, and rightly, this is right, this is how it should be, it is very difficult to get something to be named a national symbol. We have the eagle, we have our flag, but getting something named a national symbol is not something that is done easily. So getting something named a national symbol beyond those few basic things we already have, it's very, very difficult for even, I don't consider making square dancing the national dance a reasonable request, but even I would imagine for a reasonable request that actually might be valid, it is not easy to get the status of being a national symbol. That's very difficult. And so this square dancing business was somewhat doomed to fail from the very beginning. People are resistant to the idea of taking one thing and saying, yes, this is a symbol of who all of us are. This adequately represents all of us. So after that happened, what ended up happening was the local and state chapters of like the square dancing clubs that had been started a long time ago and had branched off and grown and evolved into including other folk music and so forth. They started a concentrated effort and a coordinated effort to lobby their state senators, no, not just their senators, their state legislators, to make square dancing the official dance of their state. So they're like, well, we can't have it nationally, but maybe we can get it in each state. And then if we get enough states, we can then go, you know, present another bill and say, hey, look, people love this. Why is it not a national dance? So there was strong effort to get senators and representatives at the state level to say, you know what? I love square dancing, and I think it should be the official dance of our state. Now, they did have some success in this. As of 2021, according to what I read, there have been 31 states who have made, or which have made, square dancing the official dance of their state. Now, I don't know what this does for, like, people who are so passionate about square dancing. I don't know if it gives them more partners to swing around. I have no idea. All I know is the push to make square dancing the official dance was successful in several states. Now, the language that was used to promote this idea that square dancing would be the dance above all others to name as your official dance of your state was not unlike what we hear coming from white supremacists today. Now, keeping in mind that the popularity of square dancing in the United States started with anti-Semitism and various other racist ideas, this is what was said in a letter to the Washington Post from Richard Peterson, the state chairman for the Maryland for the American Folk Dance Bill. He said, quote, "If we don't begin to preserve our true American heritage now, what will we have to leave our children? Will no one think of the children? The children." Well, because they were successful in getting so many states to be like, yeah, you know what? I think square dancing really is representative of everyone in our state, and it should be the official dance of our state. They were able to have, you know, discussions in Washington, D.C. regarding keeping it as the official dance of the United States. You know, they believed that it was an adequate enough symbol, and it would only be right to make it like a permanent thing and let the whole world know that in America we love square dancing and don't forget it. Well, there was a lot of people who pushed back and said, no, we don't love square dancing. That does not represent me at all. So in 1988, there was a hearing, and there were several people who attended this hearing, and there were indigenous dancers, there were like Puerto Rican folk dancers, there were black tap dancers, there were people from all different cultural influences who showed up at this hearing and said, you know, this does not represent me at all, and it should not be a national symbol, because a national symbol should represent everyone, not just scared white people. Now, I'm not saying, I just feel like I need to make this clear. I am not saying that no people of color enjoy square dancing. I'm sure there are some who do. What I am saying is it's definitely not a dance that the majority of anybody enjoys. That's what I'm getting at. So anyway, in 1988, in a hearing in Washington, D.C., Honey Coles, who is black and a tap dancer, he testified, "I could walk up and down 125th Street, that's in Harlem, and shout, 'Square dance, square dance,' and no one would have the faintest idea what I was talking about." In 1990, Eric Zorn wrote for the Chicago Tribune, quote, "Legislatively recognizing one folk dance form or any art form and placing it above all others is wrong because it denies the diversity of cultural, ethnic, and social traditions in America." So, square dancing as an official dance, you know, a national symbol in the United States, would be no more as of 1993. I believe, in fact I know because I read it, and if I read it, it must be true, there remained a strong push to reinstate square dancing as a national symbol up until the early 2000s. I don't know where people are in the fight for the square dance. I don't know, you know, where they are in that struggle. I don't know. I can't even fathom how anybody would consider that an important thing to discuss at this point in our history. But I'm sure that there are people out there who feel that if everybody would just square dance a little more, and if we could actually have it recognized as a national symbol, the world would be a better place. I have no doubt that such people exist. So what happened with all of this? Well, as you might imagine, Henry Ford was not able to do-si-do jazz into oblivion. Even though square dancing did enjoy a measure of popularity for a time, and even though a lot of schools did adopt it as part of their physical education curriculum, it was not in any way, a threat to the popularity of jazz. In fact, I would even go so far as to say, and this is just me talking, I didn't read this, this is just my opinion, the harder you push against something to try to call it evil or sinful or whatever term you might want to use for it, the more inclined people are going to be to embrace it and want to be part of it, because there's this element of people enjoying things that are considered subversive. Now, I'm not saying jazz is subversive at all. I'm not suggesting that whatsoever. But I'm saying that by calling it evil or sinful or whatever, that is turning it into something subversive. So by doing that, I would imagine that the efforts to make jazz less interesting to the youths probably backfired spectacularly. I just cannot imagine at any point in history where people could listen to jazz and then listen to the music that you'd have for square dancing and think, I'm going to choose square dancing. Absolutely, 100%. Now, I'm sure there are people who do. I'm kind of teasing a little bit, but trying to make it into something forbidden only made it that much more appealing. I have no doubt about that, because, you know, his target audience, the people he was most worried about, was teenagers. I'm sorry, but if you tell a teenager that they can't do something because it's bad or it's forbidden, guess what? That's what they're going to want to do. So way to go, Henry Ford. Way to help boost the popularity of jazz. Nicely done, sir. Now, here's the irony of this. So even though, to my knowledge, Henry Ford never flat out said that he was mostly, you know, primarily concerned about white people and particularly white youth, you kind of, you know, you can read between the lines and you know what he was talking about when he said that he was worried about the influence of jazz invading decent homes. We know. So what's so funny about this, though, is square dancing has a lot of its history in, you know, it came about, it was developed by people of color. For example, in square dancing, if you can take your mind back to high school and you can remember, square dancing has the caller. The caller is the one who calls out which movements you make as you dance, whether it's the do-si-do, the promenade, whatever. That has its roots in enslaved people being made to perform dances for white people, but they were not trained in the particular dances they were being asked to perform. So what they did was they had a caller, and the caller would tell people when to change their movements, you know, and what movement they were going to be doing next. So even the most basic aspect of square dancing, the caller, had its roots in something that was developed by enslaved people. They not only developed the performance of being the caller, because if you've ever listened to the caller at a square dance, I'm not like an aficionado or anything, but it's really a form of entertainment as much as it is anything else. You know, if you're going to be a caller at a square dance, you're expected to not just instruct, but to entertain. And that also started with, you know, among enslaved people, because they learned that everybody did better if they could be not only instructive, but also very entertaining throughout these performances that they were forced to make for the benefit of white folks. So they not only developed the idea of having a caller at the dance, but they also played, and I would imagine also created, a lot of the music that was used at these dances. Now, one of the styles of music, or I guess instruments, that is most commonly heard for square dancing is the fiddle. Now, the fiddle did not really come into popularity for social dances until the 1800s. But it goes back all the way to the 1600s. And there was at least one written account in which there was an indigenous man who was a fiddler. And this happened in Maine. And he was the only fiddler who was available to play at these social dances. So an indigenous man is the one who made it commonplace to have a fiddler at your social dances. Again, that was not a thing, and it wasn't even a regular thing until the 1800s. So what's so funny to me is that Henry Ford started all of this because he's a frothing out the mouth racist, and he was an anti-Semite, and he couldn't stand the idea of people enjoying things that he thought they should not be enjoying. So he put it forth a tremendous effort to make it you know, uncool, I guess, to enjoy those things. Well, let me tell you something, sir. You failed. You failed terribly. But the irony is, the very thing that he was promoting as the saving grace for America, who was under the threat of being swallowed up by jazz, it was started by the very people, or not, maybe not started by, but it was, you know, the evolution of it, the development of it was perpetuated by the very people he thought were going to be entirely too vulnerable to listen to jazz and, you know, not fall off the moral deep end. You know? And it's just funny. It's like, you know, and it really makes you think about how we categorize things that, you know, I think in our culture, maybe especially now, maybe it's always been a thing, I don't know. But there are some things that are considered white, some things that are considered part of the black community, and sometimes that is rightly so. But it's funny to me in this instance because the thing that now is most known for being a white thing, square dancing, and country music, you know, it didn't always, it wasn't entirely a white thing. It wasn't entirely developed by white people. It wasn't entirely popularized by white people. You know, the mainstays of square dancing, the fiddler and the caller, those did not start with white people. And it's just so interesting to me that something that is considered so very white, which was the whole reason Henry Ford thought it would be the right way to combat something that he considered very Jewish and black, it actually didn't start with white folks at all. And it was white people following the lead of these people of color that, you know, made it what it is. And obviously that is something Henry Ford was not aware of, something that he certainly must not have known, because, you know, history has its eyes on you. And when you do something and history looks, you know, we look back at what you did thinking you had the whole picture when you only had a fraction of it. I mean, when we see what his motives were for promoting square dancing, and then all the information about square dancing, he basically rewrote the entire history of square dancing and made it into something that was always white. But that's not the case whatsoever. So it's very interesting how history treats people who behave in such an insidious way, thinking that either they have all the information and they find out they don't, or they did have all the information but they decided to twist it up into something that it wasn't so that they could promote their own insidious agenda. And then history is like, yeah, that's really not how that happened, and we're not going to sugarcoat any of this. You did a very bad thing, and you were not a good person, and your motives were terrible, and we're going to tell the truth. I just love that. I love that the truth always comes out eventually. It does. All right, I'm going to finish this up. I will be right back with some final thoughts. Okay, I am back. My lashes are just, I don't even know. I'm getting better at them though, so I'll take it. So anyway, that is the story of how Henry Ford paved the way for, sorry, that's just irritating me. He paved the way for square dancing to be part of my childhood, probably part of your childhood. And the only thing I liked about square dancing was it was a nice change of pace from the usual gym activities, during which I would routinely get hit with a dodgeball or something of that nature. Now, full disclosure, if we played dodgeball, because I was so terrible at it, I would try to get hit early so I could just get out of the game, because I knew I was really bad at dodgeball and I was not going to be an asset to my team, so I thought I'm better off just not being here. Anyway, so, you know, had it not been for Henry Ford's racism, his anti-Semitism, his just absolutely ridiculous ideas about people, most people probably never would have even heard of square dancing. Probably no state anywhere would have ever made it their official dance. And you and I probably would not have had to square dance in gym class or anywhere, ever. Henry Ford is rightly credited with a lot of innovations, you know, a lot of industrial innovations, but as I've mentioned in recent videos, it is possible to do amazing things and to do really good things and still hold incredibly toxic ideas. Henry Ford's ideas about, for example, about how black people aren't smart enough, in his mind, to know when they're being manipulated. We see a version of that today when you hear about the, quote, Democratic plantation. And that is the idea that a lot of conservatives hold, that Democrats keep black people dependent through social welfare programs and other efforts to create a more equitable society. And the reason why black people keep voting Democrat is because they are too unintelligent, we'll say that, to know that they're being manipulated and used, and to understand that the programs that conservatives believe that the majority of black people use are designed to keep them dependent. And you know, I don't know if they realize the assertion they're making when they say something like that. I think some of them do, but I really think a lot of them have not really thought through what they're saying, because what they're really saying is that, much like Henry Ford thought, that black people just are not intelligent enough to know when they're being manipulated and used. And because they're not intelligent enough to recognize when that is happening, they're going to play right into the hand of the people who are doing it to them, and that they're going to do it gladly. So that is why it's important to talk about these things. And because a lot of these things that happen, we can look back on and think, well, that was ridiculous. He really thought that he would be able to displace jazz with square dancing. Yeah, on the surface, that is a ridiculous idea. But there are a lot of other things that happen within that that still, you know, feed conservative thought today. You know, the idea about black people not being intelligent, the idea that the only heritage that matters is the heritage that white people consider important, that America is by and large a white country, so if we're going to, quote, preserve our heritage, it's going to be the heritage that matters to white people, and everything else is just unimportant. There are all kinds of ideas that stem from the notions that Henry Ford put out there, that you know, Jewish people are a threat to us, black people are easy to manipulate because they're not intelligent, white makes right, white heritage is the only heritage that matters, and so on and so forth. So that's why it's important to talk about these things. I mean, these things are funny and interesting and make us today think, what the heck were they thinking? But there's also a lot of stuff in there that continues to be toxic and basically poison the you know, poison the water per se. I don't know. I don't know why I said that, but it just poisons the well. That's what I was thinking of. The well of thought that people are drawing from. And that's why it's important to talk about these things, call them out, call them what they are. Don't look for nice ways to say it, because the bottom line is, you know, Henry Ford was a racist. His racist ideas are still causing harm today, and I will never forgive him for what he did in making me have to do-si-do. Never. Never. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, please share it. I love to have more and more people here. It's always more fun hearing from people. If you have, did you square dance? I want to know that. Did you have to learn how to square dance when you were in school? And if you did, do you remember what grade you were in? I think we learned in, I want to say 6th grade. And I remember it was so weird to me because one day we were playing dodgeball, basketball, and then we were square dancing. And I was like, what? What? You know? And I didn't realize this was something everybody did, but it's just part of being a kid in America. You're going to learn how to square dance whether you want to or not. Anyway, have a great day. Remember that we are still in the middle of a pandemic, so if you are going out into your community, please be safe and follow all the safety precautions. We will get through this, I promise you, but it's going to take time, and we're all going to have to work together. Be good to yourself, be good to each other, don't shit on yourself or anyone else, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.